we got, Steph sitting out today. Steve, was that pre-planned? Is this something that you know a couple games in advance, or is it more like, hey, going into this game, we have to think about whether he can play or not?
We started thinking about it in Dallas. We were concerned about the back-to-back with Houston and Dallas, but obviously that Dallas game was a really big game, and he was feeling great, so we had considered it. But he woke up after the Houston game, said he was feeling great, and we decided to play him and then give him tonight off, which would give him 3 or 4 days in between games. So he needed it. I mean, this is the most games he's played in a long time, and it'll serve him well for next week.
Yeah, Coach, you just touched on the number of games that he's played. I think it's been the most in his 30s, and by the end of the year, be the most minutes that he's played. As someone who's played well into their 30s yourself, how amazed are you at his durability still at this stage in his career? It
wasn't hard for me. I played like 12 minutes a game, so even at 37, 12 minutes is very doable, so that was easy. Steph what Steph does is superhuman. I mean, I think it's his most underrated quality is his endurance and his strength and his ability to fly around like he does, absorb all the defensive pressure that teams are putting on him. Everyone puts him in pick and roll to try to wear him down so he doesn't kill them offensively. And he just keeps himself in immaculate condition, and he's just been amazing in that regard over the years. But usually what happens during the year, the last 4 or 5 years, it's felt like maybe twice during the year he's gotten an injury that kept him out for a couple of weeks, and that sort of allowed him to recharge. Then he'd come back and go crazy, and this year it's a good thing he hasn't been injured, other than 2 very, I think, minor ones. But the end result is that he's got just a ton of wear and tear on him this year. So this is definitely going to be a stretch that'll help him, and he needed it.
As for the other players on the injury report, I think J.K., Wiggs, and Gary, do you know?
They're all going to warm up and see, and we'll go from there.
I know it's hard to know what's going to happen in the next few weeks, but given the age of your guys, given what could be ahead of them, if they're assuming you're in a play on a Tuesday, play on a Thursday, maybe get on a plane, have to play on a Sunday, how cognizant of that can you be with minutes, with maybe even giving guys days off over the last 5?
Well, I think we'll know more every single day. We want to go out and win. We just let's take care of business today and see where everything shakes out. We may get to a point here in the next week where it's kind of decided where we are, and at that point we've got to think about all of our options. That's what made the Dallas game so big. Had we won that one, then we're right in the thick of everything with the Lakers, with Sacramento, with New Orleans. But now we're a couple games back. No tiebreaker against Sacramento. The Lakers obviously 2 games ahead of us now. If it had only been 1, you go to LA and that's for the tiebreaker. And so that Dallas game, in my mind, shifted things a lot and put us in a much tougher spot in terms of trying to climb the ladder. So now it's a matter of refocusing and figuring out what's the best path forward for our guys.
Steve, 2 questions. One to tonight. Just without Steph, you play uniquely. What are the challenges without Steph in that system?
I think this year has been one of our best years since I've been here in the non-Steph minutes, because we put Chris Paul in, and what an incredible luxury that is. They're very different, but Chris is capable of playing with anybody, and the game looks a little different. We definitely run more sets, more pick and roll. We don't play at quite as high a pace, but Chris is very adaptable and gets everybody going, and he's been fantastic.
And then big picture question. 3-point shooting this year is less than it was 2 years ago, and if you take the last 3 years, this year is actually like right at the average for the entire 3 years. Do you think we've hit the saturation point of the amount of threes that can take, or do you think we have another jump somewhere here along the way?
It's a good question. I would have guessed 5 years ago that we had reached that point, but I do think that everyone's getting smarter all the time and figuring not only the numbers but the flow of the game. And I think it has felt to me watching games and even our own at times where it's like, a bad three isn't necessarily a great shot. A good mid-range shot isn't necessarily a bad shot. There definitely is a balance with all this stuff. And it's got to be based on personnel, too. When we had Kevin, Steph, and Klay, every 17-footer that those three guys shot, I was clapping, So different, the shot quality maybe has gone over the top with the volume of threes. If it's the guys who aren't, the ones you want shooting them, I'd much rather have a rhythm 17-footer than a bad three-point shooter launching from 25. So maybe the league is starting to. I didn't know those numbers, so that's interesting. But maybe that's where we're heading.
Steve, we've talked a lot about your guys' defense and really anchored in the Trace-Draymond combo. But what do you think has kind of anchored the second unit defense and where you guys are still getting picked up, from that group?
Gary's been healthy and playing at a high level. He makes a big difference. It's been nice to have Loon back in the rotation. Last 5 or 6 games, he's always solid for us defensively. Moses as well does a really nice job. So we've got good personnel with that second group, and I think all in all, over the last month or so, our defense has been pretty good.
Did you get to watch the women's finals game earlier today?
Parts of it. We were preparing for our game, but I saw bits of it.
Caitlin Clark, obviously, lots of comparisons of to Steph and stuff. I don't know if you know her personally at all, but do you see those bits and pieces of similarities between them? And
For sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know her, I haven't met her, but her game reminds me of Steph's for sure. And I would guess that if you asked her, she would say that Steph has influenced her. It seems like Steph has influenced a lot of players, both men and women, over the last decade. And you're seeing more and more players, pulling up in transition and being able to shoot either off the catch or off the dribble. And she's incredible.
Three-point contest next year.
I hope so, yeah.
Steve, can I just check with you about Jonathan Kuminga? Before you guys went on the road trip, you thought maybe he'd play against the Rockets. He missed both of those Texas games. What do you think about the time that he's needed to get his body ready to perhaps play tonight or perhaps not?
Well, I think he's a very young player, and one thing that that I know from playing at that age is that you have to learn your body. You have to understand the difference between pain and an injury, and it's very nerve-wracking. If you feel pain and you're worried that you're going to create an injury or it's going to get worse. It's scary, and so I think a lot of this for JK, given that it's tendonitis, is just understanding that he's got to make sure he's feeling right and he's not doing anything to hurt himself, and working with the training staff throughout and understanding, is there danger, is there not danger. But again, I had to go through that at the same age when I was in college, and most players, I think, at a young age have to go through that process, and it's you got to figure it out, and then that gives you a better barometer for whether to play or not.
And did you get to know Don Staley via USA Basketball?
Yes, we were in Tokyo together a few years ago and got to know each other and stay in touch. So she's great.
What do you think about her coaching resume?
Oh, she's a star. I mean, what a run they've had, and I'm really happy for her. They've had some heartbreaks, the last few years, but obviously she's put together just an incredible program, and really happy for her to finish it off undefeated, win the whole thing. Amazing accomplishment.
Steve, this game is 77 years old, something like that. And now we have a league that makes a steady diet of the pick and roll. So you have a very unique style of playing. So my question is that if you didn't have those unique players, would you be one of those coaches, you're running the pick and roll over and over and over? Or is it your personnel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it is our personnel. Some of it is that my background is, playing more motion, ball movement, player movement, ball movement, the triangle offense. Chasing Stockton and Hornacek through those split cuts was a pain in the ass, and so I want to make sure it's just as tough for our opponents to chase Steph and Klay as it was for me to chase those guys around. It is based on our personnel a lot. The other thing is we run a lot of pick and roll with Steph, but it ends up in the second action. So we'll run a pick and roll. He'll come off. And most guards in the NBA, they either shoot or get an assist or turn it over, like that. They make the play. When we run pick and roll, Steph comes off, we run it, then he gets off it, and then he starts, running around like Reggie Miller. And that's what makes us unique. So it's even though we run a lot of pick and roll, it may not show up as pick and roll in the analytics because what ends up happening is the off-ball stuff out of the pick and roll. So Steph's the ultimate weapon. There's very few, if any, players who have that ability to be so good on and off the ball. And then because of Draymond's always been a point forward. It makes a lot of sense to put the ball in his hands. So a lot of this has just morphed. It's just sort of naturally progressed to where these guys have figured out how to play, and the way they do it is very different from a lot of people, and a lot of fun.
Pick and roll and the give and go. It doesn't go away, does it?
No, it never goes away. And but it's fun. I always enjoy watching our guys play just because there's so much continuity with Steph, Draymond, Klay, and they know each other so well. And it's like, it is like Stockton, Malone, those guys. It's like Jerry Sloan didn't call a whole lot of plays, and I don't. Yeah, and then they'd run it 20 straight times, and I remember, that was hard, but the beauty of continuity in the game, when players get used to playing together and you're not calling anything, to me that's when the game is at its best. Have a good night, everybody.